Nancy Burkholder stepped out of the car after a dusty 1,000-mile journey. She had arrived at the Michigan Women's Music Festival, a radical feminist event on a wooded plot of land built, run, and attended by women. It was one of the few places in the world where women could be in communion with each other, free of the weight of a male-dominated society. It was a sacred space, one that Nancy loved and had been waiting all year to return to. As she rested by the crackling fire that first night, she was approached by two festival organizers. They had heard that she was born male, that she was a transsexual, and that violated the camp's Women-Born Women policy. Within minutes, they escorted her to the gates and left her shivering outside, shunned by the sisterhood she had traveled so far to find. Little did Nancy know that this traumatic event would launch a historic protest against transphobia and forge a new relationship between transgender people and the women's movement. This is the story of Camp Trans. Transphobia had a history in the queer community. Trans women had long been barred from some feminist and lesbian spaces. They were called gender imposters and told they couldn't possibly understand the female experience. Often the targets of violence and discrimination in mainstream society, they were also denied the refuge from sexism that other women were allowed to enjoy. Nancy's plight became a symbol of the desperate need for safe spaces for all women. Trans activists decided that it was time to take a stand against transphobia in their own communities. One of those activists was Riki Wilchins. She was an accomplished businesswoman who knew how to get things done. Riki organized a group of queer and trans luminaries to protest Mishfest. And at the top of her list was Leslie Feinberg. Leslie had just written the acclaimed novel Stone Butch Blues when Riki recruited them to help lead the struggle at Mishfest. An anti-racist activist and a well-known opponent of capitalism, Leslie brought a coalition of issues to the trans resistance. The first protest was a mere 4 people across the road from Mishfest Gate. In 1994, Riki officially dubbed the protest Camp Trans, and the numbers grew to 31. They made signs and buttons and papered porta potties with flyers that busted the gender myths behind the Women-Born Women policy. But activism didn't come without risk. People were interrogated, harassed, called slurs, and humiliated. People's safety was threatened. It got ugly. Camp Trans wanted to dialogue with the women at Mishfest in order to advocate for the inclusion of trans women in the festival, but they weren't allowed on the land. Luckily, they had allies on the inside. The Lesbian Avengers, a radical group of activists, invited Camp Trans onto the land. Riki, afraid for the group's safety, asked for an escort. 2 hours later, members of Camp Trans passed through the gates of Mishfest, flanked by dykes in black leather jackets. The tension was thick as they walked through the clusters of tents. By the time they reached the middle of the camp, over 200 women had gathered to hear them speak. A hush spread over the crowd. Leslie took the stage and spoke truth.
There have always been transsexual women helping to build the women's movement. And whenever you have been in a large gathering of women, I assure you, you have been with transsexual women. Did you feel unsafe? They're women in a women-hating society, so of course transsexual women want to be welcomed into women's space for the same reason that every woman does, to feel safe.
A huge cheer arose from the crowd, and for one night, the members of Camp Trans and Mishfest slept under the same stars. Mishfest never officially changed its Women-Born Women policy. Performers routinely boycotted the festival because of this, and Mishfest finally closed its gates in 2015. Speculation is that their exclusionary policies were part of the festival's undoing. Camp Trans and their allies fought for what Riki and Leslie believed in so deeply. The right to self-determine one's gender is a basic human right, and it's a right that we are still fighting for. We've been around.